let's go. Vamos.
Okay.
Okay, cool. So, Gloria, welcome to the podcast. And I'm so happy to have you as I think you're the second photographer that I interview. So, and I know you way better than the other photographer that I interview. So it should be an
Oh,
interesting.
Pedro, thank you so much for inviting me to your podcast. I honestly didn't imagine I would be your guest, but I'm happy to be your guest today.
Yeah, no, I think, well, that's one thing, right? Because it's like sometimes we're so much deep into the work and the grind that we don't know how much we inspire or able to inspire. And one of the things, so people should know, we know each other for probably 14 years now.
I don't believe this.
Yes, 14 years because we met during our masters, right? So 2010 or 11, I guess. Oh, I guess 11 because you started the 1 year after me, I think.
No, we started together. It's
We
just that
started
I was a
together.
part-time. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So let's because and what I wanted to one of the things that I think it's cool to see on your story, it's that we're both photographers. We sort of like did a similar path in the sense of like, okay, let's do art school, then let's start building our portfolio. Let's do this, and then I went into one route, and you went into another route, and you still have the other thing that you are a mother, and you have you're married, you have two kids, right?
Yes, correct.
Yeah. So let's one thing, but there are certain things we even collaborated in photography works, and we even did a bunch of stuff. But one thing I don't know, when did you start photographing? How did photography come into your life?
When did I start?
Yeah.
I started in Mexico, actually. Photography was one of my dreams. But you know, in our countries, it's hard, or in many countries, it's hard to think, especially in cities that are business driven, it's very hard to choose arts as a feasible option for a career. So I got a job doing something else, even though my background was graphic design. And within the design, I liked photography. So I kind of put photography on hold for some years until I came to Canada. I kind of saw coming to Canada as an opportunity to start from scratch, to rewrite the story that I did not allow myself to do before. I was still young, in my 20s. And yeah, I said, fresh in Canada, first thing I did was submit my portfolio for art school, not OCAD. I started in Montreal, actually.
Mm.
And a few months later, I got it accepted. And in September, I started fine arts in Montreal, which was really good. And since then, I've been on and off because I had to take some time off while my kids were growing. But now I'm back on and really enjoying it.
Yeah, and so you start. That's cool. So yeah, like in that sense, you have very similar. Because me from Brazil, you from Mexico. Then like when I went to Canada, it was also that let me uh, not even reinvent. It's allow for it to start. That was at least the way that I saw. But I didn't know you went to Montreal. That was it like a BA or a master's program?
I did
Like a bachelor?
a BA,
Ah.
Concordia University in Montreal. I had seen the school and I was dreaming about going and doing this photography degree that I always wanted to do. And my hometown didn't have such program. So I said, if I get my visa to go into Canada, first thing I'll do is go to school.
Amazing.
So yeah, and that's how it happened.
Yeah, cool. And then, so then, and that's another funny little thing because right now you're in Canada, in Toronto, where I used to live, and now you have a studio there. We'll talk about that in a second. And now I am in Thailand, and you mentioned that you actually met your husband here.
I did. So I guess one of the reasons I ended up in Canada was because I met this Canadian guy in one of my trips. And I guess that was the reason why I started the immigration process to come into Canada. I submitted all my, I guess, documents, and it took some time. But eventually I got my skilled worker visa and was able to move here and come with all the rights, except for voting, but all the rights as a Canadian to start all over and have a new opportunity.
That's good. Then you moved to Toronto.
I landed in Montreal.
Okay.
And then eventually he got a job in Toronto and we moved here. And I've been here for longer than I was in Montreal. I've been here since 2008 in Toronto.
Okay. And maybe we should mention this because you did your BA there and then you did your master's. I never talked in the podcast about the master's program that we did at OCAD University, Ontario College of Art and Design, that became a university later. And it was a surreal experience for me. I don't know how much. I guess if I would put a spin on it, what did you get from it, from a positive sense? It's very easy to complain about whatever, right?
I'm not gonna complain. Actually, I was very grateful. When I applied to that program, I just had my second child. She was a baby, born in 2010. And I saw this program had a part-time option that to me, it felt like perfect. I can raise my kids and still continue growing as an artist or as a creative. I was on this path. I did not finish that program, Pedro. I did 2 years. I felt very overwhelmed by the fact that here I didn't have the support of a family or people around me to help me raise these kids. And there was an incident. For me to go to class, I had to have a nanny to be with my two babies. Every class I would go, I would have to have somebody to care for my kids. And then one day, after one of my presentations in school happened to be that I finished early. I went to pick my kids from daycare with that nanny. And what happened was that my son walked away from her and she couldn't catch up with him because she was carrying the baby. And I just saw my kid walking alone in the street, like a 3-4-year-old. And I was like, it's not worth it for me. This is not going to work out. And on the other hand, I realized that I did not need a degree to do what I wanted to do as a creative. I said, I don't intend to teach. I don't need this degree. I've learned what I had to learn, the theory, the critical part of it. I had an understanding about art. I made my connections. I felt like I got what I needed to get out of it. And when I left, I was happy with no regrets.
Yeah, that's cool.
That's what happened. And I can tell you now that I don't need that degree. I'm happy with my career. I'm happy the way things are going. And yeah.
I only got my my degree in the end because I wanted to finish the damn thing, and then I wanted to also to have it for visa purposes, like because I was like, okay, cool. If I finish this, I'll actually be able. Because back then I was thinking of actually living in Canada, and I actually lived in Canada for many years afterwards. But it was like, okay, if I finish this, I can have my work permit, and that can get me a permanent residence in Canada, eventually citizenship. So I might as well finish. But I had the same impression that it was like the connections, a little bit of theory, but to me that was more like, oh, really? You think that way? Interesting. And but mainly, at least to me, the thing that was the cool thing in the masters was just, okay, I have permission to create. So one of the classes, I can't even complain because one of the classes that they had, it's like, oh, go do whatever you want. So I said we had access to all the labs in the university, and then it's like, okay, I'm going to the studio, and then I did my first photo that, like, let's say produced photo, not photojournalistic one, was there. So basically, all my career path came from that interaction. So I can't even complain about the progress. But yeah, it's one of those things that you need to do it to see that you don't need it. Like, oh, you need another master degree. Like, no one ever asked me to see my master's credential. No, it's like, it's my portfolio. It's what I did. At the same time, the experience that you had there, like of doing like art installations and being around artists was very useful, like to me.
I
That
think the most
was-
important part of that process too is working with other creatives and realizing that the creative process is the same and that we all feel insecure with our art, no matter how good people can be. Because I remember seeing friends or classmates that were amazing and always doubting yourself.
Yes.
So that to me stayed forever, that, okay, it's okay to doubt yourself, but it's okay. Like the process, this is the process it is. We don't know where the end will be, but you just have to trust it and see that that's how we all create, with doubts sometimes, or the final result is something different than we expected, but it's part of the process. And allowing ourselves to fail too. That was another big lesson I learned from OCAD. Accepting failure as an option and allowing yourself to fail, which is still part of the risk we take with every project, whether it's creative or a life decision.
What was a failure for you, you think?
A failure?
Yeah, what was a failure?
Well, I find failures sometimes not in business that I had started, or ideas that I have started that didn't go the way I wanted them to go. For example, in the pandemic, I started a business with a friend, or an idea of a business for small shops, where, I don't know if you remember, but everything was closed in Canada. The small neighborhood shops had no customers. So we created this website where we would promote specifically shops from that neighborhood. I would do the photos, my friend would do all the chatting with the owners and making them interested so that we could sell their products. We're like, these shops have amazing stuff, but nobody knows because nobody's going out, right? Nobody was in the house. But if we go and curate these items, you realize what awesome stuff we had. We had like shampoos from all these fancy places, and I don't know, hairbrushes, and whatever you can imagine, cookies and fancy Italian suits, you know. We got the shop going in like a month. We had the shop online and we were having sales. Our issue was the deliveries, how we were going to make it so that people could pick it up. And there was no way back then, like Uber pickup services were not as strong as they are now. And that's what failed the business. We relied on students that could pick it up and deliver, but they were not always available to do it. So that was one of my fails, but not super fail. I always think you have to try those ideas. And if they don't work, now we have a new skill. So then, this is one of my failures, as others could be a photo shoot that I thought would go this way and didn't go. And I remember like there was one editorial and I'm like, I don't even want to see those photos, but the client was happy. So, but in my mind, it was not so great.
Yeah, that's for sure how it goes. We never know, like that those failures are micro steps towards other things. In terms of photography, what caught your eye in terms of photography? Was it like always fashion? Was it like, I know, landscapes? Did you progress your interests in photography? And because now I know you shoot like you shoot some fashion, like I even saw you in New York doing some stuff. Like, so how did your photography interests like change in terms of subject matters?
I am a portrait photographer. Like my baseline is portrait. And within portrait, I can choose different aspects of it. When we had the pandemic, personal photography business was closed, and I'm not really that interested in personal photography business because I like to do creative stuff. I like to create with light, with color, with texture, and I'm not the standard kind of photography that people would want for their homes, or I'm not the trend. I don't follow the trends. I don't, you probably know this about me, but I don't want to copy somebody's style. I try to come up with my style based on what I see. So in the pandemic that everything was closed, one thing that was not was commercial photography. So I said, okay, I can do commercial photography. I rented a studio space and I said, I'm going to shoot actors and models because that was a business here in Toronto that was still strong. It was allowed to continue shooting shows, Netflix shows, I don't know, like movies,
Yeah.
commercials. And that's where I found my niche. I also did not want to fight the fashion world here because I know there's lots of photographers. And I honestly, I just wanted to have a job. I just wanted to create and have a job. So I said, you know what? Nobody's doing kids or teens. I can do cool stuff with them and still do fashion, just not the standard fashion that everybody's doing. So that's how things happen for me. I chose a specific niche that people were not doing, and I created whatever ideas I wanted to create with color, with light, different, and learn about posting them. And that's how I ended up doing what I've been doing in the past years.
That's cool. And I remember when we, after our masters, then we reconnected a couple of years afterwards that we were like helping each other. I was helping you in your shoots. You were helping me in a couple of shoots. And I think that's a very cool thing for creatives to do together. That is like, not, I think that's already a master's degree because then it's like, oh, this person's having this issue, this person's having that issue. And then you see different styles, like, oh, everybody wants to create certain things, but then there's the, let's say, more entrepreneurial, like you need to pay the rent and you want to make it not into a hobby, but into a business. And I think that's cool when you collaborate with people like that. And I remember that's what, 2017, I guess, right before I left Canada, that you said you wanted to do a studio, and now you actually have a studio.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yes.
Yeah, so tell me about the studio.
I started the pandemic. I said, if I want this to be my job, I have to commit to pay a rent. And once you commit to pay a rent, you commit with yourself to find clients. So I rented a space back then, or sublet it a day per week in a studio. And I had to make sure that every week I had clients to pay the rent. And once you're able to do that, then you're fearless. You can do whatever you want. I did not extend my lease then because the pandemic, many things changed. I went to Mexico for 8 months, 9 months. And when I came back looking for a space again, because if I have a space, I can create. If I don't have a space, then I can have all sorts of excuses as to why I cannot shoot. Right. But once you have a space, you always have a base where you can work. So now I have this beautiful space.
Yay! Yeah, and that's oh yeah, we should show around, and it's it's like little corners that people can that you can shoot, and it's perfect for a portrait photographer because you have enough space, you have window light, you have everything.
We have a beautiful window.
Yeah, and for you, like as I know because I know you, and I know like for me it's the case, and for every photographer, it's like, don't you feel sometimes like, okay, I have my space, I have the things that I need, and then things are not happening. How do you deal with that kind of a situation?
What do you mean by things are not happening?
For example, in my case, sometimes I'm like, okay, everything's set up, but I will find other things to do instead of shooting. Like, I'll find other works, other this, other that. Procrastination. Yeah, I guess.
Yeah,
I don't know.
That's another thing I learned from that master's degree. To take action.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I guess you as a mother, you as a mother may not have that luxury of too much procrastination.
I think paying rent changes things. Like having that end of the month coming up and you didn't produce, that's a drive. So if you are a creative and you want to make sure you need like I guess there's no teachers that will tell you need to finish by this is your deadline. It's the rent is your deadline. So I can decide if I just want to pay the rent or if I want to pay the rent and make some profit.
Uh-huh.
So that's, I guess, the drive. What I'm finding right now a hard time is finding a balance between now I have this urge to create personal work,
Okay.
but my time is kind of limited by my my actual profitable work to keep the space. So that's where I am now, trying to balance that out.
Yeah. And
Commercial work, personal work, home, travel. I want too many things in life.
yeah. Because how is your relation? Because you said like I didn't know about your kid wandering on the street, but like in Brazil, it's very much like in Mexico. There is some more communal, you have the grandparents, sisters, like cousins come and help with like taking care of kids and stuff. In Canada, maybe it's I don't know. Like I had the impression living there, it's less communal. It's sort of like a shore for the parents to, for the grandparents to come and stay. It's not a given, let's say. And I know that you travel a lot to Mexico still today, and you said that you lived there for a few months. How was that experience for you, like living so long in Canada and then coming back? Because I had that too, like going back to Brazil. How was that? How was that experience?
It was surprisingly very good because I got to spend time in my home with my dad where I grew up, and my kids went to my school, which was a little bit surreal. Now many of the teachers in that school were my classmates or my neighbors or somebody I knew from back then, which was great because just to start, my kids had that support from friends that were willing to assist them and help them with the transition. It was nice to reconnect with old friends that were workmates or school friends. It was really nice. It was what we needed. It was like a warm hug in the middle of the cold pandemic. And just having the sun was amazing. Winters here can be
Yeah, a
white.
little bit difficult. Yes, I remember that.
We have light, but we don't have the bright, warm sun that we're used to. So being in Mexico was really nice. I made new friends. I reconnected with old friends and family, and got to spend a lot of time with my dad and my dad with my kids, which was nice. But then at the end of the day, our life is here. My kids are super Canadian. They're more Canadian than they can be Mexican because their first language is English. So we're back here, and now we go often to Mexico, and life goes on. My studio's here, my job is here, my kids are here, life is in Canada.
And you feel like in Toronto, like Canada is, you feel like home there?
I have two homes.
Okay, that's great. Yeah,
I have two homes, yes.
Yeah. No, I asked because that was, now I'm in a completely different situation, but I had the same thing. It was like Toronto was my home and Curitiba, the city where I grew up, not where I was born. From 8 to 25, it was in one particular town, so that's home for me. The city where I grew, where I was born, it's not but I had that duality when I was living in Canada. I had that duality. It's cool that I have two homes. So
I think
that
it's
was
okay to
interesting.
have two homes. I
Oh
think it's
yeah.
okay.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. It's a nice luxury in a way. Like and
Yeah.
what one thing I ask people that lived in different countries, especially if you come from a country that people beat themselves up because they think it's not that nice. I know it's the case for Mexico, I know it's the case for Brazil, I know it's the case for Argentina, but then you think, oh, in America or in Canada, it will be, oh, everything is better. And then it's like, you go live there, it's like, no, not really. Um, for you, what's one thing that maybe you have, maybe you don't, that you did not appreciate about the culture in Mexico and that now you really appreciate?
Something that I did not appreciate about Mexico and now I do.
Yeah.
Relationships with people. People are warm, and not just that, but you can just show up at somebody's house and like, I'm here. And say hello. Whereas here, everything has to be planned in advance. If you're gonna see somebody 2 weeks before, are you available on Wednesday or Thursday or Friday? Is it at 10 or at 9 or at 8? And whereas in Mexico, are you home? Yes, okay, I'm coming. Right? And same with the kids. Here, kids were afraid of even touching the same ball to play, or they were afraid of, we were afraid of everything because that's how things were happening here. They were afraid of being around other people. They were afraid of being in the same classroom, in the same room, without a screen between each other. Whereas in Mexico, we landed there and kids were sharing from the same chips, like a bag of chips. Like, you want some chips? Yes, I want chips. So this kind of like more human part of relationships is something that we are lacking in cooler countries.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Yeah, I had the same impression. Like the more, let's say, improvised. At least the fun is not always planned. Like things happen sometimes. I had the same kind of impression. And for your kids, I don't know. Like, do they speak Spanish too? Did you teach them Spanish, or they sort of do, or what's the deal?
They don't speak Spanish. We speak English at home. My husband is Canadian/Croatian. So we speak English at home and they speak English, but now they're picking up the Spanish. They found this love for Mexico and language, and they have friends, good friends that they visit and friends visit. So now they have this personal interest to learn and practice, and we're just
Yeah, and how old are they now?
14, almost 14 and 15.
Okay, so they're already on their teen years. That's cool. And yeah, that's cool. In terms of photography, let's go back to that too. One thing that I wanted to ask you. So I know you were very interested in, and I think that's one thing that I like about the way you do stuff is that you make it happen. So it's like, I need the part-time job to be able to travel and work. I will do it. I need this. I'm going to fund my studio. You're very much a hustler in the best way of the word. How does, because I know you said portraiture, like your thing. How does travel fit into either photography life or life in general for you?
How does travel? I need travel to be happy. Like, that's my energy source of energy. So I need to be able to go to Mexico when I want to go to Mexico. I need to able to go to Paris if I want to go to Paris. Like, it's like, to me, travel is like eating. It's a basic life need. And I always say that if you love to travel, you have to make it a priority, because it's too easy to say, I don't have the time, or I don't have this, or no, when I'm in Toronto, I'm working full time. Like, I have a morning part-time job. I come home to edit my photos, walk my dog, pick up my kids. It's nonstop until I go to bed. Next day, again, today is my day off from my work. I'm here in the studio doing this podcast, later on doing some fixes in the space, editing photos that I did last week. It's nonstop work. But when I take 4 days off, I can be wherever I want to be. and that's my escape. So yeah, it's a lot of work, but I need two jobs. Like, I need one to give me the benefits that I want from life. I need the other one to keep my creative life active. And yeah, if I want to have everything, I have to work for it.
Yeah, that's cool. And did your kids get into photography and stuff? Well, I'm sure they're into travel, but did they get into photography too?
Not specifically photography, but they are very creative, because since they were little, we would do all sorts of art projects. Color theory we did, in the kitchen floor. With very simple exercises, I showed them to be creative, I guess. Then they picked it up in school. So now my daughter was admitted to a high school that has an art program. She's gonna do performing arts.
Cool.
And my son is into design and gaming, so
Artistic,
creative minds.
yeah, that's
Yes,
great. That's
creative
cool.
minds.
That's cool. And one last thing I wanted to ask you that for you, because one of the things that I noticed, like when I met you, it was like it, at least maybe not knowing you too well, but the impression that I had was like you're very committed to actually trying to find, okay, I want to be a photographer, I want to do this, I'm gonna do it. Whereas with a lot of friends of mine that if they put, let's say, motherhood as the, okay, I need to just do this, but not because they think that they should, let's say, just focus on like not just, but like focus on
Just
being a
being a mother.
mother. Yeah, but I would never say just, but like they use that as an excuse. I have a lot of friends that are like that, and that's why actually one of the reasons why I wanted to get you on the podcast is as an example of a person that I never saw that in you, like that thing. I remember people like, but I don't know if I can start my. It's like, no, 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 I'll find a way. For you, it was like, I'm going to find a way. I don't know. How do you feel about that part? Because I think it would be interesting for, I don't know, maybe women that are in that situation, like trying to decide to go to pursue an artistic career, that it's never going to be easy, but you make it seem not easy in terms of the success, but of the approach. You're always doing stuff since I know you.
You have to be mindful and in touch with what your needs are at the moment or the moment you're living them. The moment that I saw my son walking alone in the street was for me a wake-up call to say, you have to be a mother now. You can put this on hold. If something happens to this child, a car comes and he loses his mobility for the rest of his life, I won't be, for what? For a degree that I'm not even going to teach? Like, so there are times in life where you have to be one thing or the other. And I took my good 10 years to spend with my kids, and I was there 100%. Went camping, traveled, did also every single park in the city we visited. Like I did 100% with them. Till one day I was like, okay, I'm done my job. Now they can walk to school. Now they can do this. I can take off again. So I think that there's time for everything. It's okay to put pause into your professional career and enjoy 100% where you are. But then there's a call. You have to be able to come back. The skill doesn't go away. The skill and the drive doesn't go away. What you built is still there. It's just sleeping. And then you wake it up and take it full on or halfway or as much as you need. But you have to be kind of aware of what you need and where you are and decide as you go. And it's okay to say, I'm not going to do art right now. And it's okay to say, I'm ready to go back. Even if I fail, but you have to be committed because it's so easy to have all these ideas, but the ideas won't take you anywhere. You have to take action and make it happen.
Yeah.
Like
Cool.
commit to a rent. You commit to a rent, you have to make it happen, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's a deadline that comes every month, and you need to a reminder
right.
that, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Gloria, where can people find you?
Online,
Yes.
gloriacaballero.ca. That's my Instagram as well as my website.
Okay, both
Or
of them.
in my studio in Toronto.
Yes, yes, they should visit you. You're a great photographer, a great friend, and I'm looking forward to seeing whatever you do next. Because and maybe we'll meet each other in one of your travels, because that will be fun too.
Yes, I'm looking forward to meeting you somewhere in Europe next.
Yeah,
when you move to
inshallah.
Europe to travel there, I'll meet you there. And yes, we'll see what happens in the near future with my photography.
Sounds good.
Thank you for inviting me.
My pleasure. So that's it for today's show. Thank you for listening to the Wanderings podcast. You can find show notes and links at pedrobonatto.com/podcast. If you like the show, I would love if you could share it with your friends or leave a review on iTunes. If you want to get in touch with me, you can find me on all social media at Pedro Bonatto. I would love to hear from you. You can find my photography work at pedrobonatto.com. So tune in next week for another show. Until then, I urge you to keep following your curiosity, and I'm looking forward to our next wanderings together.